Every good moral dilemma challenge features some sort of horrible, inconceivable twist. For instance, a classic one involves you standing at the lever switch to determine a train's path. It's currently on a course to hit an elderly man who fell crossing the railway. You could divert the train away, but in that world, for some unfathomable reason, it would direct them to a broken railway bridge where the entire train would plummet below, surely killing everyone on board. Do you pull the lever to save the man? Most of us would say no, because one life is not worth the life of many. Then the puzzle would change. What if it was your child? Bearing in mind that you have no time to simply rescue your child from the speeding train, would you doom dozens of people to save your own child? Now the puzzle becomes more difficult. Some might say they would do the ostensibly selfless thing and sacrifice their child to save the people on the train through simple inaction. Most, however, would not be able to doom their own child. Once again, the puzzle changes. Now, what if the train's course were originally set to a suicide run, and you would have to change course to save the people on the train? You would be directly responsible for guiding a train to kill your child. You see how it works? They all add levels of hypothetical horror to work out where your moral center lies, what you value most, how you view life and death, and most importantly, to give you irrational fears and nightmares. Now that you understand the concept, I can bring to your attention a few moral dilemmas that I have cooked up and am eager to get your opinion on. Scenario 1. You're on the brink of starvation, having recently lost your job due to a layoff. You have 2 children and a wife to take care of. With no other option, you have to steal some money from a well-to-do neighbor. Is this morally justified? What if the neighbor wasn't rich per se, but was just in slightly better shape than you? Is this still morally justified? Scenario 2. You've been caught in the act of the situation in Scenario 1. If you go to jail, nobody will be able to support your family. They will starve to death all because of you. Would you silence the person who caught you in the act? Now, what if that person who caught you was your neighbor's 11-year-old daughter? Scenario 3. Things have begun to turn around for your family. You now have a new job, and your neighbors don't suspect you for the passing of their child. However, they have not given up the search, hiring a private investigator who has begun to snoop around your place and has been asking a lot of difficult questions. His back is turned. Doesn't it make sense to silence him as well? What if you knew that this private investigator had a family as well, who depended upon what he did for a living? Could you silence him? Scenario 4. Your wife caught you in the act of silencing the private investigator from Scenario 3, and she is horrified. You try to explain it away, but she begins to put the pieces together. She grabs the gun from the study and runs upstairs to get the kids. She says she's leaving and will be taking the kids far away from you. Your children, you'd never see them again. Isn't it the right thing to do to finish her off as well? As she makes a run for the stairs, doesn't it make sense to grab her by the hair, get the gun out of her hand, and drag her down into your basement? You can't kill her. Your children need their mother, and besides, you love your wife. But wouldn't it be the right thing to do to keep her alive, but contained, under your control? Scenario 5. Your wife has been locked in the basement for 3 weeks now since Scenario 4. You've told the kids that she's been on a little unscheduled vacation. You think you've got her under control now as she's stopped trying to claw her way out of the restraints and seems far too weak to run. Isn't it time to maybe relent a little and let her children see her? No, it's not safe yet. She still doesn't know her place. She still doesn't appreciate what you've done for her and the children. Scenario 6. Your children were very bad. They went into the basement and saw Mommy chained up in a chained cage. Fortunately, you were down there to explain the situation, but the children were clearly hesitant to believe you, especially your preteen son. Doesn't it make sense now that you have to chain them all in the basement? At least this way they can all be together. Now what if I told you that their containment was a hole in the foundation where you'd been doing some repairs during the spring? And what if you accidentally forgot that the basement has a tendency to flood in the summer? Scenario 7. You haven't reported to work in 2 weeks. Your boss has left you a message letting you know that you've been terminated. Nobody has seen you. Nobody seems to remember that you exist, except your neighbor, who comes over to ask if you've heard anything from his PI. He still has a wife and 2 living children, just like the ones that were destroyed, all because he wouldn't leave things alone. Doesn't it make sense that he has to repay the debt? Doesn't it make sense to take his family for your own? Scenario 8. Your new family is scared of you. They can't stand to look at you as you hover over them. You try to have a conversation with them just like a real family. But every time you do, one of them screams for help. You can't have that. Doesn't it make sense to sew their mouths shut? Scenario 9. They're afraid to look at you. Isn't it kinder to sew their eyes shut so they never have to look at you again? Scenario 10. They'll never really be your family. Isn't it the right thing to do to end their suffering? Scenario 11. You can hear their voices even now. You thought you sewed their mouths shut. Isn't it the right thing to do to finish yourself? Scenario 12. You're too much of a coward to pull the trigger in Scenario 11. You'll just have to try to silence their voices with the sounds of a new family. Isn't that the right thing to do?